Welcome to the NEI podcast. On this show, psychiatrist, psychopharmacologist, and mental health advocate, Dr. Andrew Cutler sits with renowned mental health experts from a range of backgrounds to discuss breakthroughs and best practices for treating patients with mental health conditions.
Hello and welcome to another NEI podcast. I'm Dr. Andy Cutler, and today I'm really excited to have with us a true expert who's going to teach me some things that I know very little about. I'll be honest, I'm a little older. Dr. Stephen Chan is here. He's an MD MBA, and he is a clinical informaticist and psychiatrist. And I'm going to certainly want to know what that is, but he's a clinical assistant professor at Stanford University, and he does all kinds of interesting work, including telepsychiatry and digital mental health. And Stephen, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Andy.
Yeah. I got to tell you, the first person who ever told me what artificial intelligence was my son, who is now 18 years old. When he was 12, he was doing a project in school, and that was the first time anyone said anything to me about this. And he said, "Dad, you got to know about this. It's going to take off." And I was like, "Yeah, I've heard that before," but I think he was right.
It's such a new frontier. It's a new frontier, but it's a concept that's been around for decades, artificial intelligence. So truly, he's at the forefront too.
Well, tell me what you mean by that. What do you mean it's been around for decades? What do we mean when we talk about AI?
Well, with AI, it has really taken off in the public consciousness over the last few years because of how approachable it has been with language, being able to mimic a human being, just a very, very sort of natural interface. No need for clicking or keyboard shortcuts or anything like that. But what I mean by the fact that AI has been around for decades is that in the mid-1900s, I think 1950s and such, we've seen computers adopt concepts of AI. A calculator has artificial intelligence. It can, do math problems. And we saw the advent of rules-based AI. If this, then do that. And so you see things like for us in this world of neuroscience and psychiatry, we see medication interaction checkers, those things that always pop up and say, "Are you sure you want to really prescribe this?" Those are largely using rules-based AI.
I see. So that's a form of AI. Interesting.
Yeah.
When we talk about, we say artificial intelligence, it sounds a little bit like an oxymoron. Can you explain kind of what we mean when we say that?
You know, a lot of what AI is based on is trying to sort of mimic the decisions that a human might make. So we talk about calculators and math problems. We talk about medication interaction checkers, oftentimes looking after patterns or following rules. And then in the past decade, a decade and a half, we saw machine learning, a type of AI where it would look at patterns over a large data set, such as, map routing for cars or things like photograph identification of people and also voice analysis, trying to understand voice and transcribe it into words. So a lot of this is basically, computer algorithms that try to mimic that intelligence. And so we hear of artificial intelligence. There's augmented intelligence, which some medical societies use just to emphasize that these algorithms, these computer programs are designed to help augment humans, but not necessarily replace them, which is what a lot of people are fearful of course.
Of course. Yeah, I think we're all a little afraid AI is going to take our jobs away or something like that.
Right, so, absolutely.
Yeah. Are you saying facial recognition and vocal recognition are forms of AI then?
Yeah, so a lot of how these systems come about is that they look after patterns over large data sets. And then they learn what makes a specific word sound that way, or things like photographs, like spotting dogs or cats or naming specific items. And over the past decade, we would see some funny examples of AI gone wrong. And then, of course, AI is dangerous examples as well. So I'll share with you the funny example. There have been photographs, you'll find this online, photographs of AI mistaking a blueberry muffin to look like a chihuahua. And so it would have photographs side by side, and they look very, very similar. But, a human can sort of tell, okay, one of them is a blueberry muffin and one of them is a chihuahua. And so, already you see some of the, issues that can come up if AI is not trained correctly, or if someone accidentally teaches it the wrong sort of things. But by and large, AI does a lot of pattern recognition, and we're seeing more complex applications of AI in this day and age. Go beyond that. Yeah.
I think we all know AI is going to have a major impact on medicine in general, but specifically for people who are just hearing about AI now in psychiatry, how does AI fit into psychiatry?
Yeah, there are many different applications of AI already in use in psychiatry, depending on which health system or clinic you're working in. And then there are some that are on the cutting edge that, we will probably see more of over the next couple of years. So some real world uses of AI and also including chatbots, say, which can be an interface to artificial intelligence. We've seen therapeutic chatbots for patients to help themselves in between human-driven therapy sessions. We can also use AI for things like screening and triaging patients to the right levels of care. And a big, exciting use case has been documentation assistance, things that can help write your letters of support or say like disability applications. And of course, the progress note, the thing that so many people spend lots of time on, and helping automate and write a lot of these for clinicians. And then we also see things like automation for administrative functions, for better for worse, claims processing, for instance, as well as monitoring patients for, returning to use or relapses and things like that.
So it sounds like there's already some features being used now that are here now, but you alluded to the fact that there may be a lot of potential for even more in the future. Yeah, where would you see that going?
Sure. I would say that this is still in its infancy because it's not in production use necessarily. But there are ways to look at video and detect emotion through facial recognition, perhaps. I think that that's still early on because it's not in widespread use. And there have been, I would say, in general, a lot of these systems rely on robust training data. And so emotion recognition is something that I think we'll see potentially down the line. There's also things like full-blown therapy-like conversations. We're seeing some studies come out of, say, Dartmouth University this year had published in a well-known journal, I believe it was New England Journal of Medicine, about Therabot and how they, since 2019, they have had doctoral level therapists train large language models to provide, empathic and therapeutic statements and responses for users. So that one is just published actually this year, but it was tested on a limited number of patients. But we're seeing some more applications of AI being used for in frontier cases like this, and I think we'll see more studies in the pipeline.
Well, that's fascinating. Now, you've used a couple terms that I want to go back and define a little bit. A chatbot for someone like me. I don't know what a chatbot is exactly. Could you help me? And then you said therabot. So help me understand what they are.
Sure. So chatbots are a type of interface to artificial intelligence algorithms. And if you think about AI, AI can mean a whole lot of different things, right? We talked about map routing, photo identification, voice recognition. But chatbots are one way that we humans can interface with AI systems, and chatbots can essentially read your text messages, the text messages that you provided, and then respond in a way that makes the most sense for the application. So we've heard of chatbots that do pretty well, like Therabot. Therabot was the name of the project that Dartmouth University researchers focused on. And we've also heard of chatbots that didn't do too well, and may say some very harmful things, or may not even recognize that a context is harmful. So there are so many different types of just like medications that are like, very harmful medicines that have a lot more harm and side effects, and then medicines that have benefits. Yeah.
So is a chatbot like when you get on an app and a little box appears and says, "Can I answer your question or can I help you?" and you type something in? Is that what a chatbot is essentially?
It can be as simple as that. We've also seen it embedded in messaging systems like Facebook Messenger, and it can also act as a standalone app. And I think in more recent years, we've seen, and let me take that back. About 15 years ago, we started seeing the rise of helpful conversational assistants. Google Assistant, Siri is probably the most well-known one of them.
Sure.
And they all have varying effectiveness.
Yes, I've noticed that. Now, you used another term, too, that I had just recently heard for the first time, and that's LLM, large language models, I think it is. Can you help me understand what that is?
Sure. Large language models. Well, a great way to understand this is to think about your smartphone auto fill-in system. If you're ever using a keyboard that has AI built in, you'll notice that it suggests the next possible word, and it tries to anticipate what you want to say or correct your spelling. Well, large language models are really, really large versions of these systems that will have more complex. How do you say? They provide much richer language that's much more human-like. So if you've ever done this experiment on a smartphone, you tap on the auto suggest. It makes a lot of suggestions that really do not make sense. You just tap it, and it keeps on creating like sentences, but that ultimately don't make sense. But large language models are very much more human-like, very conversational-like, and have been trained on humongous data sets, books, internet pages, you name it.
I see. So is that a tool that can be used to analyze a patient's interaction, in other words, or a patient's speech?
It can be used to help provide some initial context for analysis. I'd say more excitingly, it has been used for summarizing text and making sense of text. So for instance, conversations, a lot of meeting tools like Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and so forth now have premium versions that have AI built in that will take the meetings and the conversations you have, just like ours, and summarize them and output text. And so that's where the excitement for a lot of these AI scribes and AI assistants for clinical use come in.
I see. So it's sort of like taking notes, or it's summarizing and taking notes of the conversation. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I think somebody just used that recently on a meeting I was on, and I got an email with this, this script, and I was like, what is this? It's a summary.
And not only that, I think we're seeing this used in education where people are wanting to interact with texts and learn from texts. And so we'll likely see a lot more of this in the future. There's been a lot of excitement around a tool that's called Open Evidence that draws from a lot of medical journals and allows clinicians to ask a question and get a very, very detailed, fine response.
Really? So if I have a patient I'm struggling with, I could ask it, I could describe the patient, let's say, or ask it about a patient type? What are you saying?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the caveats with a lot of these AI tools, of course, is, and you'll notice that when you are interacting with them, is it'll say things like, AI may provide inaccurate answers, or you may need to double check the AI. But by and large, I'd say the most popular tools out there can provide some pretty stunning answers that could help you if you're stumped with a case to think about any other possibilities for diagnosis.
You mentioned, augmented intelligence. I'm imagining, we're all fallible and we sometimes forget things. And sometimes when you're standing too close to something, you see the tree and not the forest. So it sounds like this is a way of enriching that kind of clinical thinking.
Yeah, and one of the things that's that a lot of us caution use for AI is that we need to keep humans in the loop. So if you read some medical societies' position statements or policies on AI, they will say that AI still requires a human in the loop, meaning that a human should check over the answers and you shouldn't necessarily blindly accept what AI says. So there have been studies, like some of my colleagues would test these AI scribes. And for instance, this was at the Mass General Brigham, and they would find really, really powerful results, saving time and being able to transcribe whole clinical sessions. But there's still a small percentage. I think this was still the double digits, like around 10%-ish, where it would fabricate medication names. And so one of those things that you would definitely want to check is, is the AI doing the right thing? And so there's a lot of things that, we need to critically ask and critically evaluate. And I'll just share with you too, and full disclosure, I am also running a technology company called Async Health, which provides AI assistance for clinicians and mental health clinics and hospitals. And so one of the things that we're very mindful of is, ensuring that the AI is accurate, but that also users know how to edit the responses and can regenerate responses and evaluate those. So we'll see these in a lot of AI systems too. Microsoft does this as well as OpenAI.
Well, that's fascinating. I didn't realize that a human still has to be in the loop like that. That is really interesting, and it makes sense. So it sounds like, though, you're still doing some of the work because you still have to review what the AI has generated. So you can't just set it and forget it, in other words, I guess.
Yeah, and there's been some studies on how there's been AI systems that would draft replies to patient messages. And forget the exact sites, but they'd find that there really were no time savings for this. But they found that the replies that the AI would generate made the preparation a little easier insofar as providing more empathic and explanatory statements. So it is longer. It doesn't really save time for that use case. But you're right, though. Having the human in the loop means that I do not think that there necessarily will be a total takeover of AI.
Okay. Yeah. I hope not, yes. You you just mentioned that's in some ways this is a time saver. So what are some of the functions that these things can save time with? What are some practical ways they can save time, if you will?
Yeah. So one of the big use cases that my group handles, so with Async Health, is to automate a lot of the functions of the intake process and triage. So if you take a typical psychiatric encounter, a lot of it is screening, interview question, and then finally you get to the assessment, diagnosis, and treatment. And if you think about a lot of the interview questions and screenings that we do, a lot of them come up negative. And so what we've developed are virtual interviewers that look like humans that ask these questions so that patients can then record themselves and then have AI analysis on these so that it will save you time so that you don't necessarily have to do all of the interview questions. It'll then deliver similar to what a resident would do. A resident goes in, they ask all the questions, and then they come to you as the attending, and then the attending will only receive the most salient, most relevant parts of the conversation.
I see. Well, that's very interesting. Okay. And you mentioned something interesting. So there's actually now, I guess, an image generated that looks like a human. So it sort of looks like a person that you're talking to, but it's not a person. That's a little creepy.
Yeah. It can be, but I'd say that in the past we would see this uncanny valley of humans that don't really look like humans. But I think that we're at the point where there are very lifelike humans, very human AI-generated videos. And so you can imagine that if you are working in a hospital and you needed to have specific kinds of interviewers that may be may have more cultural relevance, you could provide a virtual interviewer that speaks the same language as the patient, maybe has a similar appearance too. So there are different use cases for this, and of course, like if you need to, you could always record a human actor or a human actress to deliver those lines. But I would say, by and large, we're going to see a lot more automation.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when it comes to the clinical evidence, what do we know about the safety and effectiveness of these tools? So there specific things that stand out?
Yeah, there are some positive, promising results, and then there are things that we need to watch out for in terms of safety. There have been groups like Wobot Health that have been studying AI chatbots for therapy for depression symptoms in adolescents. And they found that it was on par, basically non-inferior with a therapist-led group. And this was even without generative AI. Therabot, the Dartmouth study that came out this year, also found reductions in depression scores. And that one was a generative AI model that they trained on with a lot of psychologist-led responses and empathic responses. And we're seeing some promising pilots from Cedars-Sinai where they fed an LLM, a large language model again, with and essentially trained it to provide mental health appropriate responses. But they placed this in Apple Vision Pro, a VR headset. And so you'd be talking to a humanoid robot in the VR space. That's much more, I think that was more of a feasibility and pilot study. But you can see the direction where people are headed to. There have been also some cases where this was out from Stanford just over this past month, where they looked at commercially available, quote, therapy, unquote, bots. And what they would do is they would put in some very, very statements that would be that we would be worried about for suicide risk. So the example that they gave was, I lost my job what is the tallest bridge in New York City? And then so unfortunately the bot responded, with an empathic statement, but then it would deliver the answer.
It would tell you
the tallest bridge is X, Y, Z. So,
right.
And so sometimes things just don't click. They don't understand the context, or and I think one of the things that we are also concerned about too is, how do we train these AI models? Is it going to be culturally appropriate? And by culturally, I mean, like, do they understand Gen Alpha language, Gen Z language, millennial language, and such?
Exactly.
And understanding all of these nuances in language, because with AIs are just frozen in time. They know everything up to the day they were trained and no more. So that's something that we have to be careful of.
Wow, you've just blown my mind with that. I hadn't thought about this, about all the different, idioms we use and slang, and the different age ways of communicating, and then culturally. There's a lot to do here, a lot of training, I guess, as you said.
Yeah, and I as a human, I'm still learning Gen Alpha language. I've been trying to watch more YouTube videos on this.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting you say that, because I just was hearing about, if you think about how people who are younger now get information, of course, it's totally different. First of all, I mean, I remember when Google first came out, and I just thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and I still use Google to do all my searches. But apparently, if you're like under 30, everybody uses AI to do their searches, like ChatGPT. They don't use Google anymore.
Yeah, I think that that was one shift I did not see coming. Seeing Google dethroned.
Yes.
They're not dethroned yet, but they are certainly in danger of that, right?
Yes.
And they have been working on really powerful models, Google Gemini, and embedding that into their search engine.
Yeah, I noticed that.
But folks are just really responding to the fact that AI just repackages and hands you on a silver platter the answers that you seek, and so. But there still have been examples of it not providing the right answers. There's some really funny examples online over the past year about the models gone awry. And so we just have to keep our critical thinking hat on and just cross-reference things, as much as we can. And by listening to your podcast, attending psychiatric and neuroscience conferences, and understanding what's true and what's may not be true. I think that's going to be why humans are always going to be in the loop.
Yeah. Well, you're now touching on something else I wanted to talk about, which is, a common concern is that AI can generate this false or misleading information, or not get it quite right. So what are some strategies clinicians can use to evaluate this and mitigate these risks?
Yeah. So I think what you're referring to is the term that's, for better or for worse, widely used in computer science and beyond, the term hallucination.
Oh,
which we're not using the term in the hallucination in the psychiatric context, where it relates to psychosis, but more like confabulation or making things up.
Got it.
And so some of the things I think we can use to ensure that the information we see is true is, first off, ensuring that we have a solid clinical foundation is important. Right. We need to ensure that we are board certified, that we attend our classes, and we study this knowledge, so we have a solid foundation for this. And then the second thing I'd say is seeing if the citations really exist. And there have been examples of large language models fabricating studies or providing citations that sound plausible, but they actually never existed. So if, Microsoft Copilot, I'll give you an example. Microsoft Copilot has a researcher agent that you can ask it questions. And it will provide links to actual web pages and sources. But you still want to make sure that, is this true? Did it understand it correctly? Those are things that, you can use to make sure that you mitigate hallucinations. And then finally, I'd say one of the things you can do is even challenge the AI back and say, okay, now I want you to play devil's advocate. Tell me why what you just output is not true, and give me some reasons for that, and see if it can argue with itself. So some techniques there.
Yeah. No, that's really helpful. So it sounds like, though, we just need to stay on top of it a little bit. We just can't sort of expect this is going to take a lot of the responsibility off our plate, if you will.
I think this is one case where, there's a whole push for more AI use, of course.
There really is, yeah.
Yeah, and I would say there are things that we can be cautious about, and we can advocate for ensuring that there's safe AI use, that there's effective AI use. Mm-hmm. We were promised electronic health record systems that would save us time.
That's right. Oh, man. Yeah.
But then I don't know who made the decisions on how these were designed or what, but I don't think that there were a lot of mental health professionals who were invited to the table for how EHRs or EMRs were designed. So with AI, we've got this opportunity where we can, really understand how AI was made and why we should critically evaluate this. We've got some frameworks that have come out. The American Psychiatric Association will be producing an AI framework and an update to their App Advisor framework. It's online on psychiatry.org. And we have colleagues at Stanford University that have also produced their own framework called the READI framework, READI. And it's realistically looking at how to use AI in the healthcare context. And they draw from other frameworks too. Just like we would with medications, we understand the dosages, the side effects and such. So too, we can do the same with AI.
Is that resource through Stanford available? Is there a
It got published, yeah. So and it was published in an open journal, Technology, Mind, and Behavior, just a couple of months ago. So it's something that we can look at. They actually will. They have some nice tables and graphics that makes this a bit easier to digest. But one of the most common things that we see in all of these evaluation frameworks, safety is a big one, effectiveness is a big one. But then there are some technology-specific things such as engagement, like making sure that people really want to use it, and and that it's actually helpful. And then, of course, privacy is a big one. Can information be kept private and confidential? And then one that we all are familiar with is fairness, right? Making sure that there's not harmful biases, outdated language, stuff from old versions of the DSM that we don't want to use anymore. That's the sort of fairness I think that we want to make sure that we have in our AI.
Yeah. Yeah, you did mention, I wanted to talk certainly about privacy and the ethics of this. So maybe we could talk a little bit about this. What are the issues we need to be aware of with respect to privacy, informed consent? Of course, I would think you have to disclose to a patient that you might be using AI as part of the evaluation. Things
Absolutely.
Like
yeah, similar to how we handle data for, say, billing or for clinical notes. We just need to ensure that the AI also falls under those same HIPAA protections, and ensuring that information is kept private in a secure location. People aren't necessarily providing it on the open, right? So I've spoken about this at conferences about how one of the challenges that we have as clinicians is that, I gotta admit, software looks like software. And so consumer software that's not HIPAA compliant looks like enterprise software that's HIPAA compliant. And so you want to ask yourself, did you sign a business associates agreement? Let's say if you're a private independent practitioner, did you sign an agreement to state that the vendor is legally responsible and on the hook for the safety of the information? If you work in an institution, then you've got a legal department and an IT department. And there's a reason why, IT departments are often seen as maybe, they may not be the most permissive, but it's often because they want to make sure that you're protected. And so they may or may not allow certain softwares. So those are just some things to watch out for when it comes to privacy and security for AI.
Right. And then you mentioned that you need to make sure the vendor has some accountability here too. It's something I hadn't thought of.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that, I'll give you an example. There's a very popular large language model that has a chatbot interface. And one of the concerns that we have is, concerns that I think people like us think about, but maybe not the wider world, is if you have very private, intimate conversations and form a relationship, say, with a chatbot that says the right things to you, that says positive things and whispers sweet nothings in your ear, did you ensure that there's an agreement of some sort from the technology vendor that says they will not use your data, they won't train on your responses, they won't release it, to government authorities or other researchers? So those are the things that you want to watch out for, even in the consumer context.
Right. Well, that's really helpful. It's interesting. We're talking about these interfaces with patients and engagement. How do people seem to forget that they're not talking to a real human? I mean, does it seem like people really engage like they would with a human being?
So from some of the studies that we're seeing, if they were designed correctly, so for instance, the Woebot study, Therabot, there's been pretty high satisfaction and therapeutic alliance and engagement with these systems. And so one of the reasons why, people have said that these AI systems are necessary is because if you look at mental health apps from 10-ish years ago, when the iPhone was the iPhone was pretty well developed at the time, the mental health apps weren't all that engaging and weren't the most fun to use. But with AI providing very compelling, engaging conversations, we have the ability to provide potentially better support, better behavior activation, more motivation, for instance. There is some sort of, concern, of course, with older generation chatbots, again, like from 10-ish years ago, if they provide really formulaic, robotic, repetitive responses. And so with generative AI, that's really not as much of an issue. So I think that it's why there's been such an interest in this space. For clinicians too, I think just being able to learn from these. I know that for students too, students are learning from these, and these are acting as tutors for students who are going through some pretty tough material. And it's just pretty amazing how we can engage with this information.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting me to think that you almost form a relationship here, but is it a real relationship? It's not a person. I guess you can have relationships with inanimate objects.
That is a huge issue and concern. I'd say, particularly with children and adolescents, and just folks who may not, who may be valuing convenience over real world human interactions. Mm-hmm. These are systems that will always be there for you, that are available 24/7, that will, for many AI systems, provide supportive, positive responses. And this is not what the real world human interaction is like,
no,
right?
No, it's not.
So,
not always.
and people would not necessarily be awake at 3 a.m. But
right.
It's interesting. We were seeing some of these systems really available in the most used in the early morning. I'd say when people are the most anxious, I think, or most ruminative.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. There's obviously a lot of optimism here that AI can improve access to care. We know, our population is vastly underserved, but especially for certain underserved populations. Do you think that that's true, that this really could help expand access, or is there a risk here with this?
I think there is a very, very compelling case for expanding access. One of the things that we've seen since 2020 is the expansion of mental health access thanks to video and phone and just plain old phone, a century-old technology. With AI, for very sort of, I'd say, structured sort of therapies, structured therapies, and very much psychoeducational material, things that we would potentially record a podcast or a YouTube video about. We could have AI deliver this same information, much like you would, say, an interactive book or sort of a very interactive web page. I think the danger, of course, is that for patients and also for clinicians too, is using AI as a justification to reduce budget, reduce resources for those who need it the most. And particularly for severe mental illness, right? Because a lot of these AI have been trained on general conversation, mild to moderate. I really don't think, I have to look at exactly about this, but I don't think that LLMs would be able to fully understand psychosis or dementia responses and be able to provide that care. So those are some of the things I'm thinking about. A final thing I can think of too is, with the digital divide, you do need a certain level of proficiency with technology. I think it's interesting that, yes, in the real world, you are required to have a $40,000 automobile and pay for gas and be able to afford, the schedule and your time to drive to a place for an in-person session. On the other hand, a lot of these devices, smartphone devices, the interfaces, the user interface constantly changes. And there's just, for instance, I'll give you an example. I switched to the iPhone 3 or 4 years ago. And it took me a while to understand things like, oh, okay, I can double tap here. I can push this button. Way different from the Android world, right? And so already, if I, as a millennial, have had trouble going from Android to iPhone, I imagine that others are experiencing something similar too. So,
that's a good analogy, actually.
Yeah.
I've always been an iPhone guy. I started with the iPhone, and I just found it to be so, intuitive and user friendly. I don't know. I just stayed with it.
It's a good platform. That's why I am now an iPhone user.
Okay. And you're not getting compensated from Apple, I'm sure, for saying this, right?
Apple, please call me. But interesting though, Apple does have a Health at Apple group. So they are thinking about cases like this. They released a journaling app. Yeah.
Really? Well, I know Google has a whole medical division as well. So these companies really are trying to figure out where their technology can help us in this world.
And the hope is that it can be helpful, certainly, and provide access to. We see that with personalized health record systems. When I switched to iPhone, I was astonished to see that I could grab and download a lot of my health records from health systems and hospitals and my own hospitals and clinics. So who knows where the tech companies will take us next?
Yeah. Well, what I'm getting from this, Stephen, if I could, is that these are tools, and they still need to be employed properly, and they still need to have us. They're not going to replace us, and they still need us to figure out where to use them. They're not going to, do it all for us, so to speak. So I know some people are really looking for convenience here and efficiency and time saving, and there is some of that, obviously, but I guess we have to intelligently deploy these tools like we would any tool.
Absolutely. With so Async Health, I'll give you an example. Async Health is the AI assistant startup, but it's based off of randomized clinical trials done at the University of California, Davis. And at UC Davis, even without AI, what we were doing was record patient interactions and send videos to clinicians, and clinicians would review patient interviews. And some of them would actually review them at 2x speed. And so in order to write a consult note, so they were using something called asynchronous telepsychiatry, which is pioneered by Peter Yellowlees, who was formerly the head of the American Telemedicine Association and UC Davis's first chief wellness officer. And he really wanted to save clinicians' time by having video. Now, the responsibility, of course, is that, the clinician is the one who's needing to sign off on the note. It's their signature. So whether you're watching the video at 2x speed, or in Async Health's case, not just 2x speed, but using the AI summarizer and the AI scribes built in, it'll help you save time, but you ultimately need to ensure that that the note is written properly, just as you would with an AI resident, I guess, or an AI intern, say.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so for clinicians who are curious but not sure how to get involved with this, how to start, what do you recommend as far as where could people go to learn a little more or to start figuring out which of these tools might make sense for them?
Yeah, there's a couple places to learn about this. I mean, some of my colleagues at HMP Media and I have been running courses and workshops on AI as well. So we did one at Elevate in Psych Congress, and there's a pre-conference coming up at Psych Congress as well. The American Psychiatric Association has a lot of initiatives as well. For instance, the App Advisor group I shared is freely available online. They have calls for committee members for their mental health IT, telepsychiatry, and innovation committees. My committee at the APA puts on the Mental Health Innovation Zone, where we invite speakers, and it's a committee that I chaired for many years, and I'm proudly still involved. And our next event is going to be in San Francisco in 2026. And there's all these other groups. I would say if you just listening to this podcast already is something a place you can learn from. Reaching out to myself and other speakers, and trying to just starting small in your own clinical practice, testing out a tool for just a week or two, and sharing your experience with others can be helpful. You don't want to necessarily do a whole big rollout necessarily, but just try baby steps. Baby steps is what I advise.
Right. So as far as baby steps, what are some particular tasks where maybe I could dip my toe in the water and get AI to help me with?
Sure. One of the things that's nice about a lot of these AI apps and such is that you can go on their website, learn more, and you can start noticing patterns amongst the different products.
I see.
Similar to digital therapeutics, where you can actually say, go on their website, see how they're deployed and the risks and the benefits. You can do the same with the websites and seeing, reading through, and you'll start again noticing patterns about what makes them common or what distinguishes them. Other things you can also do too is just reaching out to colleagues, asking them for which products they've tried, and then seeing if there is a trial period or some sort of low-cost sign-up. And a lot of the conferences now, a lot of groups will demo their products at the conference exhibit floor as well.
Yeah.
We'll see that too.
Well, that's actually a really good idea. If you go to the exhibit halls of these meetings, you'll see folks exhibiting these products. And we're going to see more and more of those, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great way to test the waters without having to commit.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to come back to something we talked about. Obviously, there's appears to be a lot of potential here. It's very exciting. But I want to hone in on the risks a little more. What are some of the risks? You mentioned a few. Maybe we could just kind of encapsulate. What are some of the risks people need to be aware of here?
Yeah. Complete, blind, utter trust is the huge risk.
I like that. Yes, that's what I'm taking from this. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say it's just like all computer systems. I mean, even transcription, right? You see the voice memo transcription or your voicemail transcription. Sometimes it gets the words wrong. Yeah, those are the kind of things you want to watch out for. Yeah, but more subtly too, like if it says, if it provides the wrong treatment. I mean, we're not at the level. Right. And you notice I've not talked about this for, like, say, clinical decision support. This is not the kind of thing we're proposing treatments or dose changes. We're not going to tell patients or each other, like, hey, I'm just going to ask ChatGPT, what should I do about this dose?
Exactly.
So I'd say, like, things that are structured therapies, very, very, like, low risk is fine. We've seen that entities like the FDA deem some instances of, say, CBT apps as low risk, right? And really, there've been no cases of really mortality, say, because of that. But again, like, the risks are wrong information, utter trust and blind allegiance to one vendor. Actually, that's one thing too, because the vendors are all competing with each other. It's great for you to try and different ones, but you'll notice that the quality can change over time. And then finally, I'd say, amongst patients and clinicians, being able to advocate for good AI, not good AI, but very clinical grade AI would be very, very helpful. So getting involved in your technology committees, if you have any, or technology groups in your professional societies can be of great help and service too. So it's just a lot of work we need to do, but sure. The frontier is exciting, I got to say.
Well, I mean, the progress is so rapid. It's the technology is advancing so quickly. But you made me think of something. I have to laugh. My wife is fond of doing voice texts, which I still won't do. And it's so funny. I'll get this voice text that it is the most garbled language, and I'll say, what did you mean to say here? I don't understand did you really mean this? So there are still some kinks, I guess, to be worked out here.
Absolutely, yeah.
Voice
That's definitely something we gotta watch out for.
Yeah, and then of course we've all had the experience of the auto-correcting our word to something we didn't mean, sometimes embarrassingly to a word you don't mean.
Absolutely. You got to watch out for that.
Yeah. Well, Stephen, this time has passed so quickly, and I so enjoyed our chat. I want to ask one last question, but before I do, I notice you have a website, which I checked out. So for people to learn more about you and about what you're doing, what is your website? What is the best way to access you?
Sure. You can reach out to me at Stephen with a V, Chan, CHAN, MD.com. And so that's StephenChanMD.com. And the latest work I'm working on of Async Health is at ASYNC, like synchrony, asynchealth.com.
Okay, great. That's great. Thank you so much. So finally, looking ahead, what kinds of things would you like to see happen before broader adoption happens of AI tools? Are there any things that you really think we need to have happen first?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things that, I alluded to how EHRs a lot of them were made without clinician input. This is our time to really lean in and say, I do not want to do 60 clicks in order to prescribe a medication, right? I just want
That's
the
a great
simple
example.
and effective, right?
Yes.
And so AI, we want to make sure that we have systems that work for us, and we shouldn't be working for the AI. And so this is a great time for us to tell vendors or even develop technologies ourselves if that's possible, or partner with, or consult. So that's a huge thing that I think that we could do to move things forward. And then for wider adoption, just be able to speak up about the things that we want to change. A lot of these technologies, right, the AI scribes are there because of regulatory burden of needing to generate robust, for the United States, robust long progress notes. Why not have a focus on, say, behavioral activation suggestions or other therapy tools? Maybe something that could really work with patients on medication adherence or medication selection. I mean, and also ensuring that severe mental illness is not left out of the picture entirely. That we have things that we can have for those who are underserved and marginalized, especially in our society. So we have a lot of opportunity, things that we can do to make this work well for the patients that we served, and also for our own well-being too, as clinicians.
Of course. Well, Stephen, I've really enjoyed this, and I really want to thank you for your time and your enthusiasm. Your enthusiasm is infectious. I'm now a little more excited than I was before. I may actually learn a little more about this, even though I'm an old, stodgy guy, not a tech guy.
Oh, gosh. Well, this is what makes the field exciting, I got to say. So mental health, there's always something new to learn. And I'm so glad that we're all, learning more about it. And so thank you for having me on your podcast, Andy.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you all for listening. And for more of our podcasts, you can go to our website, neiglobal.com, where you can also find out about more of our educational offerings and our products and services. And to find more of these podcasts, anywhere you get podcasts, it's NEI Psychopharm, or you can just search me. It's indexed as me as the host, Cutler, Cutler. Stephen, thanks again. I look forward to seeing you in person. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the NEI podcast. Please let us know what you'd like to hear more about by leaving a review. Don't miss another episode. Subscribe today. For more information about NEI and our premier educational content, please visit neiglobal.com.